Hello, boys and girls. Undertaker Freak 1127 here, fresh off the heels of a very awesome Jimmy Eat World concert. And what you are staring at is the set list that Jimmy Eat World's bassist, Rick Birch, handed to me. They're throwing out picks, and I reached out for this, and he handed it to me. And it was amazing. They only handed out like 3 of these things, so this is actually better than getting a pick. 20 people wanted to get a picture of it. I was afraid of somebody taking it. But whatever. It was a great show, and I do apologize in advance if my voice sounds a little bit more scraggly than usual. I guess 2 hours of screaming out lyrics at the top of your lungs isn't the best thing to do for your voice. So I disregard that every time. I don't care. I lost my voice at Ozfest, and I was hoping to lose it again here. However, the only thing about that concert that did sort of piss me off is that Jimmy Eat World had an unannounced meet and greet. Right as Christine and I were leaving the lobby of the venue, we were leaving to go get food, and right after that, somebody told us that Jimmy Eat World had a meet and greet, and only 5 people showed up. Why? Because it was unannounced. And when we stood outside the tour bus after the show with only like 13 to 15 people waiting to get stuff signed and stuff, their security guard came out and said that they weren't going to meet with fans after the show because they had a meet and greet earlier. An unannounced meet and greet. And you would think if a band really cared to meet with their fans, they would actually announce the meet and greet that they're going to have, especially when it's 6 hours before the show. But whatever, it was a great show. I can't complain too much. I got a fucking set list! Anyway, something else happened at that show. A kid about my age, about 19, about 20, was standing behind me, and when Jimmy Eat World came on, he started to cry, okay? It was his first concert ever, I think. I was talking to him a little bit before the show, and he started to cry a little bit, you know? Tears of joy, I'm presuming. And one of the big burly guys standing next to him, you know, bald-headed, shirtless, you know, smelling like rotten tuna, he's like, "Why are you crying, you little pussy? Be a man, it's just Jimmy Eat World." I turn to the guy and I say, "Excuse me, sir." Well, I didn't say it that nice, but I said, "Hey, it's his first fucking concert. If you don't like the sound of him crying or you don't want to see him crying, don't look at him." And he says, "Well, he's a man. He's grown. He shouldn't be crying." And I look at him, I'm like, what in the fuck is your problem? What's your malfunction? When did it become such a bad notion for men to cry in this country, or in this world for that matter? Why is it such a taboo thing for a man to be seen crying in public or seen crying at all? This is something this is something you might have heard before, maybe from your parents. If some of you have fathers, especially fathers, it's always the fathers that tell these kids, "Don't cry. Crying is a sign of weakness. Crying is a sign of mental weakness," and all this other crap. And I think a sign of weakness is actually somebody telling an impressionable person that crying is a sign of weakness. Someone overpowering someone into thinking that crying is a sign of weakness. Now, I want to talk about this because this is something my dad used to tell me when I was a kid, but he eventually gave up when I explained my piece to him. And I don't cry very often. It's just something that if someone asked me when the last time I cried was, you know what, I really would not be able to remember, because it's not like I haven't had shitty things happen in my life. It's just, I don't know why. And it's not a toughness thing either, because I learned actually about 5 or 6 years ago that crying is actually not a form of mental weakness for a man. It is actually a way to release emotion. Think of it this way. If it's fine, if people say it's a natural, like say a guy is getting pissed off at his girlfriend, screaming, "Ah, you motherfucker, ah!" You know, he's screaming at the top of his lungs, and the girl says, "Why are you yelling at me?" "Because I'm angry. It's a natural emotion." What does that same logic apply to crying? Shouldn't crying be a natural emotion too? It's something human beings do. And why is it relegated only to women? Why can't men cry? Because it's a sign of weakness? If you show me, it's a sign of being a man. It's a sign of being a human being. When you start denying your normal human emotions, when you start denying that they exist, and you start excusing your normal human emotions and other things, that's where you start becoming less of a man, if you ask me. Now, if you ask some of these macho, biker, pumped up on adrenaline assholes, they'll tell you the exact opposite. But you know what? Cry. If you want to cry, cry. Let your emotions out. Let it all run out. That's what crying is meant to do. It's meant to release stress. When you get stressed to your ultimate breaking point, if you don't get pissed off and break someone's neck, you cry. It's an alternative way of releasing emotion. You know, those things that so many people try to deny all the time, especially anger is another one a lot of people try to deny too. I'm not angry. I'm just getting angry because it's a natural emotion. Just say you're angry because it is natural. It's intuitive that it's a natural human thing to get angry. It's a natural thing to be, you know, to a lesser extent, maybe jealous, sad, angry, happy. You know, it's just the way humans react to things, and that's all that really matters, the reaction. Because if you're just out there like a robot, you know, if you're just going out there like unfazed by everything in the world, where's the fun in that? Even someone like me with the most boring, well, with the exception of going to a concert, with the most boring life can find the simplest joy in emotions, facial expressions, tone of voice, inflection of voice, things like I pay attention to that a lot too. So some of you ranters better pay attention. No, I'm joking, but I pay attention to that a lot when I'm watching people on YouTube or when I'm watching TV. I just find a simple joy in watching facial expressions and listening to tone and voice changes, because I think if a lot of people paid a little bit better attention to each other out here in this world and how we change our tone of voice, we don't just move our facial muscles and change our tones of voices for no reason. They're meant to imply things, meant to imply thoughts, ideas, actions, what we might do next. I think if a lot of people paid, you know, a little bit better attention to people in that respect, we might be able to live together in maybe some kind of better harmony. Maybe, I don't know, because there are a lot of things that go ignored, and that's why I pay attention to the things that go ignored the most, like facial expressions. Like, for example, do I even need an example, really? Like George Carlin, for example. That guy, if you watched his HBO specials or watched him do any comedy act, if you muted it, less into his older years because he was getting a little bit more worn down, but if you just muted it and watched his facial expressions and how he moved around and how he changed tone of, okay, if you muted it, you won't be able to hear tone of voice, but if you just watched his facial expressions, how he moved around to imply where he was going with his next point, or to illustrate things, that's a big one, to illustrate things. You could be entertained just by that. Now, I've done that a couple times, and even though I know what he's saying by heart with most of his HBO specials, I can just sit there and be entertained because this guy knew exactly what to do with tone of voice, and more importantly, with facial expressions and this kind of thing here with body language. That's the word I was looking for, body language. And that's one of the major things they teach you in comedy. You can't just get up on stage and go, so I got off the airplane today, and the baggage lady said, "Can I check your bag?" And I said, "Sure you can. Just be careful. You might get crabs." You can't just do that. So it's not just for comedy either. In everyday life, it's just a hobby of mine, okay? So let's recap with the whole crying thing. Crying is not a sign of weakness. I don't care what your drill instructor, what your football, hockey, baseball, soccer, badminton, tennis coach told you. It's not a sign of weakness. It's a natural human emotion, and those trying to put those human emotions to rest are stupid. For the most part. Because why are you trying to stifle human emotion? That's why we have emotions, to release things. We keep things bottled up inside. If we keep our anger and emotions and frustrations bottled up inside until they all collect up into one gigantic ball and it splits, eventually there's going to be a breaking point. And that's when all the negative, horrible things we see in the news usually happen in this country, like school shootings and whatnot. So, I'm not trying to sensationalize my point. I'm just saying everybody has a breaking point. And everybody deals with their emotions in different ways. But sadly, people who deal with their emotions by refusing to cry because they think it's weak, usually we're taught from a young age by their parent, usually their father, that crying is a sign of weakness. And again, let me reiterate this point because I think it's important. A sign of weakness is telling an impressionable person that it is a sign of weakness to cry. So remember that. What the? Anyway, Undertaker Freak 1127. Have a good day, folks.